Welcome to the State of Fintech podcast. I'm Destinee Day, Vice President at York Public Relations, and this is where we go beyond the headlines to explore what's really shaping the future of financial technology. Each week, we sit down with industry leaders to explore the current state of fintech, from emerging technologies to market trends that are reshaping how we think about financial services. Today, I'm speaking with Paul Provenzano, Vice President of Market Development at ebankIT. Paul recently showcased at Finovate Fall, and we're here to understand how this technology fits into the broader conversation about artificial intelligence in banking. This conversation will give you practical insights into how AI assistants are moving from concept to reality in financial services. Let's jump right in. Welcome to the State of Fintech podcast, Paul. I'd like to first start off by congratulating you on your successful demo at Finovate Fall. Would you like to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about ebankIT?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Destinee. And first of all, it's just great to be with you, and I really appreciate you hosting this podcast today. Finovate was amazing. The first time ebankIT has been back in a few years, so it was great to come back the way we did, demonstrating our newest innovation, Agentic AI, conversational banking. And so it was received really, really well. A lot of great feedback. And we're excited about, where it goes from here. So glad that we could be here today and talk a little bit more about it.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I'd love to start the conversation off by asking what makes ebankIT's AI assistant fundamentally different from chatbots that we've been accustomed to in banking?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's a great place to start because AI chatbots are not new. They've probably been around now for 5 or 6, 7 years, and really, facilitating a very specific focus or areas of focus, largely centered around support, which has been very efficient for financial institutions. There's a lot of great case studies and ROI that go with that. But I would say that what distinguishes or differentiates now what ebankIT has rolled out is kind of the next generation. So an agentic AI conversational banking agent is directly connected to the core. So we're leveraging and using transactional data, core data, and connected to other data sources to now create a much more personalized experience for each individual user. And so now that the data, the information is based on a person's history and relationship with the financial institution, they can begin to execute really, real world banking tasks, transfers, card controls, spending analysis, and just a whole variety of different financial insights that typically are either unattainable or just very, very cumbersome.
You've called this AI 2.0 for banking in a press release and in some materials. Can you walk us through what that evolution looks like in practice? You've made some references to it just now, but I'd love to get into the details of it.
Yeah, and what I'll do is I'll give some examples of exactly what we did at Finovate in terms of the type of use cases that we demonstrated. So we have a live platform at Finovate, and we started our demonstration using an AI voice interface. And my colleague actually did a prompt using or speaking in Portuguese. So it's a really good example of an English-based internet banking system that leverages AI that's multilingual. And so it enables a financial institution to now deliver services in a multilingual way without having to make any investment in conversions, language conversions, or anything like that. So that's one example of how an AI tool can be incorporated into internet banking. Some other use cases we did were around finding a fraudulent transaction, being able to identify fraudulent transactions, and then going so far as to locking a card, identifying outstanding bill payments that haven't been made, scheduling those bill payments, and then putting alerts in place when those bill payments are due in the future. And then getting into some business examples, small business examples around cash flow analysis. So really the spectrum of capabilities is quite broad and extensive when it comes to use cases. But that's where we start to distinguish or differentiate between kind of the 1.0 of AI today, which is a lot of support oriented, and 2.0, which becomes much more transactionally and personalized.
It's almost like a 24/7 branch in your pocket at whenever you need it.
Yeah, I would say even more than that. It's a 24/7 banking assistant that knows you, knows who you are, and can support you immediately.
So that approach, that agentic AI approach, changes the customer experience dramatically compared to the traditional menu-based systems. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about, consumer use cases today, so step outside of financial services even for a minute. And, it's been interesting. There's been a lot of research just this year on consumer use preferences around AI. And, AI is no longer really being used as, tell me the weather in New York the third week of October. It's being used for more, sophisticated insights and research, and really kind of being used across the demographic landscape. And so we see those same practices, those same types of inquiries and prompts being brought into the financial services world, where people are going to start now prompting for information regarding their, financial well-being, the financial wellness. And so I think this is where you start to transition away from the menu approach, or having to drill into different screens and say, mobile or online banking, and you start prompting for responses or for information from an agentic or an AI agent. So I think that's where you'll start to see the transition from the menu-based approach to more of this conversational approach. And again, a lot of it's being driven by how people are using AI today through just natural aspects of everyday life.
Your AI assistant uses Microsoft Azure and proprietary model context protocol. How does this tech stack enable the complex banking tasks that your technology uses to perform?
Yeah, so if you think about it, it's a good question, and trying to answer without getting too technically in the weeds. But ebankIT has a digital banking platform, and it's an API first, API centric digital banking platform. And then what we did was leveraging Microsoft Azure, their AI tool and their speech tool. We brought that into the ebankIT platform through our APIs. And so that AI agent, which runs on a Microsoft secure cloud, so that keeps everything fast and protected and safe, integrates in with the ebankIT. MCP is another abbreviation for model context protocol. So our MCP server. So those two coupled together really are what power an AI assistant to understand what the customer wants, what they're looking for, what action to take, because our platform is integrated into the core and maybe other system of records. We can then point the AI assistant through the MCP to the appropriate data, follow the appropriate rules that have been established, really without missing a beat. So that's how the ebankIT platform and then the Microsoft Azure AI tools are connected.
So how does the system maintain context across multiple transactions and conversations?
So think of MCP, what I referenced, as a bit of a universal translator between AI and banking systems. So instead of having to build, let's say, a bridge every time AI needs to talk to a database or a payment system or a system of record, MCP provides that standard language that works across all of them. In banking terms, MCP lets the AI navigate different systems, payments, compliance, customer data, without needing to start over each time, without needing to re-authenticate, ask same questions about who the user is. So it speaks really the right tech language to ensure that everything is flowing securely and smoothly, and then keeping a history of where you've been and what you've done. So that's the importance that MCP plays in this. That really is what enables the AI, the Azure, to really fluently and consistently speak or read information off of through the ebankIT platform.
Beyond basic transfers, what are some of the more sophisticated financial guidance scenarios your AI handles? I know that you've mentioned a few earlier, but just looking for more examples. I feel like maybe the options are limitless.
Yeah, it really, it really is. And that's what's so exciting about it, is because there's a lot of creativity that can be enabled through this. So, and I think those use cases will grow as people become more and more comfortable with AI agents in general. But a few additional that come to mind could be things like simulating mortgage scenarios, and more than just putting in, a mortgage amount and what is the payment, typing into AI or prompting AI, based on my direct deposit history and my current expenses, how much could I afford? And what would my monthly payment be? And what would the interest rate be? So using insights, using data for AI to help guide and help calculate what that, mortgage payment could look like. Another, interesting, not overly complex, but kind of a real world example is, being able to identify particular spending patterns and giving some kind of a prompt to what a savings might be. So it could be detecting redundant subscriptions, what, that might be in the way of an annual savings. Let's say, if I was to cut out my weekly coffee trip, how much would that save me a year if I want to start a special savings or something, like that. And then, I think top of mind for both consumers and financial institutions certainly is fraud. And so being able to, dig into and very quickly, especially if you think of, fraud situations that happen, after hours. You'd mentioned, having a banker in your pocket 24/7, a really great example of being able to identify fraudulent transactions, and immediately take action on locking a card, after hours or on a weekend. So those are where, I think AI starts to, and the AI agent starts to become pretty creative and pretty interesting, and really start to drive engagement between a consumer and their financial institution.
The multiple transactions hits home because we just recently figured out we were double paying for a Hulu subscription. And, it just makes, I sat there and thought, oh, I wonder how long that's been going on and how much money I've been accidentally throwing away every month because I just didn't know about it. So.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, you think about it, I've never really done this unless I notice something, but to be able to just go back and type in or do a prompt that says, which of my service providers have increased the most over the last 12 months? So immediately being able to identify, well, it looks like your mobile phone bill has increased 30% since last year. Okay, might be time to shop a new mobile phone provider. So, it's just things like that that really start to create some interesting use cases.
And I feel like, to go back to your point about personalization, right? That's really the relationship banking that I feel like a lot of people are, searching TikTok for. It's people don't go into branches anymore for that detailed relationship banking. And I feel like that is the kind of personalization everyone's been talking about for years in the mobile environment.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you think of personalization with the AI agent, I mean, you and I could type in the exact same prompt, and probably get very different answers, whatever that prompt is, because it's going to be based on our transactional relationship, our financial relationship with the financial institution. And so that's where the personalization, it's not, some canned response or some canned answer. It's based on the reality of my financial relationship and based on the scope and the nature of the services that the financial institution can provide. So you're exactly right. You're spot on. It is, I think it really becomes that the catalyst for delivering, truly personalized, financial services to each and every consumer.
And on the business side, because I know this has business applications as well.
From an actual business standpoint, there's, a number of really good business use cases, and especially as businesses are scaling up or down. One use case that we see could be, advantageous in a larger enterprise or organization, maybe that has, multiple users, CFOs, different roles, is to start to identify, who are active users, when's the last time people logged in, if people are no longer part of an organization, locking their accounts or locking them out. So there's a lot of ways that AI can help govern, the AI agent can help govern that side of it. But then on the other side of it, and this is where we think it really starts to get pretty cool and exciting, and it starts to position a financial institution as a true financial partner with small businesses, is things like, cash flow analysis. Show me a cash flow the past 6 months versus the same 6 months last year. Categorize my expenses over the past 6 months. Graph those expenses over that same period. Which expenses have increased and decreased? Which service providers have increased or decreased, right? So really, very quickly through a series of prompts, literally in 2 prompts, you could do a full cash flow analysis, expense analysis over the last 6 months, and which service providers have increased and decreased, and begin to take action without having to, download, mountains of data and, sift through, each transaction and all that. So we think that the opportunity on the small business market, it could be even greater than that on the consumer side, just because of the amount of data, the information, and the importance of cash flow management, expense management, invoice management, payables, receivables, really come and play into the business. So we're super excited about those opportunities.
I know a lot of small businesses that I've talked to that have looked for resources like that. So I think that is very exciting.
Yeah, and I think, today in larger enterprises where they have, sophisticated ERP systems and they're doing data downloads, and they've got people dedicated to some of those tasks, it may not be quite as impressive. But if you're a small business owner and you've got 1 or 2 employees and you're wearing multiple hats, to very quickly be able to do an analysis on your expense cash flow, I think there's huge value to that.
Let's get into a little bit of what happens when the AI encounters a request that requires human judgment or falls outside of its programmed capabilities. I know that's a big concern with AI going on right now. I'd love to hear how you're responding to it.
Yeah, and so, as I kind of briefly mentioned, but it really is a matter of keeping the customer in control. And that's, one of the biggest areas that we see is most important to that builds trust with the financial institutions. It builds trust with the users, so that they don't feel that AI is just going to start making payments and sending money and doing all types of transactions without any oversight or any approvals or anything like that. So again, because the AI is integrated into ebankIT's platform. When a task or a recommendation to start a task is made, the consumer will be in control. All the appropriate MFAs and approvals may come into play. Prompting for a PIN, prompting for some kind of a password, and so that's how we're really helping to manage and support that. The human stays in control.
And I know you just demoed at Finovate Fall, and I'm curious to hear from you what resistance or concerns you're hearing from financial institutions about implementing agentic AI, or if you're hearing positive feedback from financial institutions.
Yeah. So usually that's the first comment is, I love it, but I don't think I'll be able to sell our compliance team on it. So how do you help manage that? And I think, so it certainly is a big topic. Compliance and control is at the top of it. What we've incorporated with the agentic AI, because it's embedded, into the digital banking platform. You've got those authentications and those controls inherently in place, because it has to be something that you're logging in to manage and facilitate. We're starting to talk about this in the context of kind of a crawl, walk, run approach. I would define, or I would say, AI chat agents for support, that are in place today, certainly could be considered kind of that crawling or entry phase. Now we're getting into that walking phase. So, what we do in working with financial institutions and the conversations that we're having are, what data sets, what system of record do we want to start with? Again, we've got integration to the core. So that, is kind of the path of least resistance. And once people understand the control aspect of it, that usually mitigates any of the concerns on the compliance side, because now a customer, since they do have the control, a lot of the compliance falls into into those, that area where the consumer would normally be initiating those types of interactions anyway.
So if I typed in, who won the Super Bowl, it wouldn't necessarily answer.
Good question. And so that's, one example of what data do you want this to point to. So now, while we're using, Microsoft Azure as our AI agent, we would point that to a specific data source. So if we pointed it right to core data only, then that Microsoft Azure experience is only as good as the data that it can point to. And so you're correct. They would come back and say, I'm not familiar with what the Super Bowl is, or something like that. But that's exactly right.
How does your platform integrate with legacy banking systems without disrupting current operations?
Yeah, so really kind of simply is, we have built into our platform what we call an integration layer. And so really it's just pre-built connectors that allow us to interface into any core legacy system or any middleware provider. So that fundamentally, with or without AI, is just a fundamental part of our platform, and that's how we're getting to the different systems of record. So whether it's a core system for consumer, maybe a different system of record for commercial, maybe a different system of record that has mortgage or another line of business, our platform connects to these sources of record to bring in a full financial picture. So there's really no rip and replace required by the financial institution. And then think of the AI agent as an overlay on top of that. And so then that's how the AI tool, through our APIs or our connection to the core, is bringing the information back.
So how are you balancing conversational flexibility with security requirements of financial services?
I think there's a couple of different parts to the question. And so I think, first of all, from the security side, again, keep in mind that the AI banking agent is behind a login. So since we are dealing with an individual's financial transactional history, financial relationship. It's extremely important that that's secure, and access is only given by a login. So every interaction is authenticated, encrypted, and logged. So that's how we're really supporting the security requirements. And then one of the reasons that we really chose the Microsoft Azure platform is because of the natural language experience that comes with it. And so it does have a very conversational, just a very natural feel in the way that it responds to prompts. And I think that reinforces the relational side for a financial institution, because let's face it, when a consumer is interacting with a financial institution with this tool, they're not thinking, Microsoft Azure, they're thinking this is my financial institution that's talking to me. And so we wanted to make sure that we decided on a tool that had that natural language protocol to it, and really had a strong conversational element to it.
And let's take a minute and look into the future. But where do you see agentic AI heading over the next 2 to 3 years? Feels like a lifetime in today's AI environment, right? When things change on a monthly basis, but let's give it a couple of years. How do you see agentic AI changing the banking?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really is going to come down to the interface of digital banking. I think that's where we'll see this most significant change. So instead of a very menu-driven, page-driven, multi-click driven experience, it will become much more of prompt-oriented. And even with agentic AI, you have the opportunity to start offering proactively insights based on different types of transactions and different types of activity that's occurring within someone's day-to-day activities. And so proactive alerts and recommendations will just be automatically generated and then presented as somebody logs into the system. So I think it goes from a reactive, you're logging in for perhaps a particular purpose, to when you log in, you're going to be fed information, and then also the opportunity to ask for certain information. So I think the user interface is where we'll see some of the greatest change.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's very I think the idea of being logging in and being prompted with information and insights is very interesting compared to how I interact on my mobile device today. It's very quick. Oh, check the balance kind of attitude.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think, an example, one example of that could be, let's say you've logged in and you've recently had some type of a payroll change, maybe either a result of a new job. And so now your direct deposit is greater than what it was, or maybe you got a raise or a bonus, something that created an increase in the direct deposit. And I could see, a situation where the agentic AI recognizes that and alerts you that, Destinee, I noticed your paycheck just went up $1,000. Do you want to put that toward your mortgage, or do you want to put that toward a savings account? So starting to make some recommendations, identifying, an activity change, and then making some kind of a recommendation, off of that. So that's where, the agentic piece of it really starts to come into play.
So it's really kind of taking over this aspect of relationship banking, something that we kind of discussed earlier. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on how this technology might change the role of humans in banking, and which functions do you think are ripe for AI transformation?
Yeah, I think it's certainly a really good question, and I know that top of mind for a lot of bank executives. Employees are important, an important part of the organization. And I think what we'll see is it will actually elevate human roles. So I think freeing staff from repetitive tasks, empowering staff to focus on the relationship, advisory services, strategic growth. So, things like, helping a first-time home buyer really kind of plot out and manage, what they need to be saving towards, the different options they have for them, maybe some investment planning or advisory services. So I think, it will become the role of individuals or humans in banking will become more strategic and further reinforce the relationship. I think, you have the opportunity with AI to take on some very strategic but yet automated functions. One that, I just mentioned around, identifying a direct deposit change. There could be, other examples from an automation standpoint of just, continuing to do analysis on transactions, proactively looking for potential fraud. There could be, data analysis on proactively alerting, hey, Destinee, we see you've got 2 Hulu subscriptions now. You can cancel one, right? So I think that's where the AI becomes a supportive agent and some of these, more kind of rhythmic or automated types of examples.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I heard at a conference recently that AI will eliminate, the mundane tasks, but the true power of humans in the future is going to be relationships. And I thought,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think AI has 2 roles to play in the relationship. One is it will free financial institutions to focus on that human relationship more strategically. But then second, from a relationship standpoint, because of the conversational and the empathetic tone that it has, and what it can facilitate, it reinforces the relationship between a customer and the financial institution in a very, very favorable way where, I really feel that, the strong opportunity for financial institutions are for them to come alongside as financial partners with either consumers or their small business owners. So I think there's opportunities to improve and enhance the relationship on a couple of different fronts by using AI.
For a bank executive that's listening to this and who's considering AI implementation, what key advice would you give on getting started?
Yeah, so I think, and I believe we're talking in the context of kind of this AI 2.0 now, this AI conversational banking agent. I think it's to, start small, start with, some defined use cases that you want to use and promote to your customers. High impact use cases like, what we've been talking about, fraud alerts, spending analysis, things like that. And, then, start to create, what that crawl, walk, run path looks like. But I think it's important to kind of start with some defined use cases, and then, certainly identifying and partnering with a platform provider that understands, your compliance and the infrastructure of the financial institution is going to be very, very important. And so, I think that's where, financial institutions, I think they feel like they have to boil the ocean. And it doesn't need to be that way. The AI is only as strong as the data that it's connected to. And so that's where we would help them define kind of the data strategy. I'll give you one quick example on that. And so you could start with just using core data, the transactional data that you have. And then, over the course of time, start to building out and making or accessing, a financial institution's rate tables. So now you start to combine the power of transactional history, historical data, now with financial institutions' different rates of different products and services. Now you can start to get into cross-selling products and services based on a transaction history. So if a financial institution is seeing, I'm going to Home Depot a lot, over a short period of time, hey, you qualify for a line of credit, a home equity, something. So starting to marry or match up transactional information with credit, financial institution rate information, rate tables. Now you can start to expand those capabilities. So that's what I would say for a financial institution that's thinking about an AI implementation, is that, identifying the data sets that we want to start with, and then mapping out the strategy with that.
And then final question for today is, what should we expect to see from ebankIT's AI capabilities in the coming year?
Yeah, I think it's, we're excited about this and what the opportunities ahead are for this. So I think, you can expect to see deeper personalization, building off of the example that I just gave of using different data sets to now starting to prompt a consumer with products or services proactively. You can still start to see kind of a voice first experience. So I referenced early on, the power around the Microsoft Azure speech tool enables a financial institution out of the gate to be multilingual across hundreds of languages. And so that really opens the door now for financial institutions in supporting a multilingual customer base. And then an area that we're putting a lot of focus and emphasis is on, expanding the business banking features that small businesses are going to want beyond the transactional data, but also bringing in invoicing, receivables and payables and things like that. So those are some of the areas that we're really excited about building out, and the AI capabilities to bring to market in the coming year and beyond.
Well, I want to take a minute and thank you for being our first guest on the State of Fintech podcast. It's been a pleasure.
This has been awesome. I'm honored to be the first guest, and this was just a lot of fun. It's always great to connect with you.
Thank you for joining us today. If you found this conversation valuable, subscribe to the State of Fintech podcast wherever you listen. We release new episodes every week featuring the voices shaping the future of fintech. Visit yorkpublicrelations.com to access our full State of Fintech report and explore more resources for fintech leaders and financial institutions. I'm Destinee Day. See you next week.